Hi there! In the previous videos we tried to implement DAG in Airflow and the flow in Prefect so that we can introduce checks inside of our flow and the DAG and test the individual steps in our pipelines, right? We also can use MLflow to log the results of different checks and then browse the results in MLflow web interface, and in this video we are going to do that. Prior to continue, please make sure that you installed MLflow, and it's fairly easy because that's the Python package, right? And you can do it with help of pip install, right? I already have my MLflow installed, and actually we can create the MLflow script. Let me go back to my text editor and run first MLflow script. I would go to the directory MLflow. Here I have requirements, so that make sure that you installed MLflow together with all our standard libraries already. And let me create a new script. It's going to be a new file. Let me call it log artifacts. And that's again a Python script. Well, I would say let me quickly go back to the terminal because I want to first run MLflow UI and show it to you in case you've never seen that before, and then we are going to write a script, run it, and see how we logged the results to MLflow. In order to run it, I'm going to use command MLflow UI, and I would like to set up a backend store URI, which will be my SQLite database, right? MLflow DB. The reason I want to have this backend SQLite database because I'm going to log some artifacts and I want it to be stored not just in a file system. Actually, SQLite is the file system based database, but still it's a database, so it will be slightly more convenient to me. So that's it. Let's wait. Ah, it's already listening. Cool, that's fast. Okay, let's go to the browser and see how it looks like. Yeah, so we have MLflow successfully installed and running on our local host, and you can see that I do not have anything here yet because, well, I did not run any script, there are no experiments on the default one, and there are no runs here. And my idea is to create an experiment, right, where I'm going to run a couple of things which generates to me some reports, and then I will be able to browse the results running here and maybe check different artifacts. Let's check. I would like to create several runs in my MLflow, so I'm going to have a cycle where I'm going to iterate through different batches, finally, right, because we never actually run our checks for several batches, and I'm going to log all my running results to MLflow so that we can browse and see what's going on here. And again, that's a Python script, so I will start from importing some libraries, and I cannot really stop myself by copying it from the previous script. Because that's going to be all the same. And of course I need to import MLflow because I'm going to use it here. Then I need to load my data, and again you already have such instructions. I like it slightly more here, so I'm just derive it, copy and paste to my new script. And now let's create our calculations. So we need first to set up an experiment and then implement our logic. So let me start from that. So we need to specify tracking URI and experiment. For tracking URI, I'm going to go back to my browser, and that's it. So I'm just going to copy it to avoid any mistakes and place it here as a parameter. And now we need to create a name for our experiment. don't know how to call it, I would just call it test, but please come up with better names, okay? And now we can do some runnings. Let me iterate through 10 batches. And here I can implement what should be calculated during my each run, right? So the idea here is that I created an experiment and then I decided to kind of simulate that I have several batches of data. And again, right here I use a straightforward cycle, but in the more production-like case, you won't be able to iterate through your data. Most likely you'll receive it batch by batch, but that's the logic behind will be very similar. So I use the same MLflow experiment, and in each run I'm going to calculate my data drift suit and save the artifact, and this artifact would be HTML report. And MLflow, you can use logging, and MLflow allows you to log different parameters, like standard parameters for machine learning models and user-defined parameters. And here, as I'm going to actually write some batch tests, I'm going to use parameters like number of successful tests, number of failed tests, and HTML report itself. So let me implement that using MLflow interface. First of all, I need to run my checks. So let me do that. And here I need to iterate through the batches. I keep using the same reference data, but I want to use different batches of production data so that I can see different results. And I'm just going to implement something like this. I will just use the batch ID as an index. Maybe that's a little not very straightforward logic, but here I'm going to use my batch ID and batch size to iterate through the rows of my production simulation data, right? And the idea here is that batch ID is like integer through 0 to 10, right? And if I multiply it by batch size, I will be able to calculate index position. So that's how I iterate through my production simulation data. And well, all I need to do here is just save my report. And here comes MLflow. Now we're going to log a couple of things like number of successful tests and number of failed tests and this report as well. And for doing that, we're going to use MLflow log param and MLflow log artifacts. Let's see. So basically we use method log param and we log batch ID so that we can recognize what batch we analyzing, right? We log successful tests and failed tests, and we do it with help of data drift suit sdict method, which returns to us the dictionary, and then we know the structure of this dictionary. It has the summary part, and there we have success tests and failed tests with the following values, right? So that we can log it. And let's log report. Well, that's it, and now we can actually run our experiment, but before that I would rather add one more instruction to have some output in our terminal. It is print run info. So here is our run. And by having this instruction, we will be able to see some additional information about our run. So let me save my script. Here it is, and I go back to the terminal. Let me open up one more tab right here. I activate my virtual environment because my MLflow installed right there. And well, now I can run the script. Python log artifacts. Let's see. Oh, again, something is wrong. Experiment. Yeah, we missed N here. Experiment. Hope everything else is okay. And the batch ID. Well, let's quickly fix that. Let's check. Yep. Okay. And yeah, that's very fast, but if we stop for a second and highlight each single running for string, we will be able to see that here we have artifact URI, so we know where it logs data in our file system. We have some end time, experiment ID, it's my first experiment, so experiment ID is equal to 1, life cycle stage active, running ID again, running name, and status running user ID MLdraw, that's me. Now let's go to our web service. Let's update it. And now together with default we have also test experiment, which is a really bad name, but that's what we have. And now we can see that there are a lot of runnings here, runnings results 45 seconds ago, so literally just now. And if we press here two columns, we can see that we have now more parameters here. It's batch ID, failed tests, and success tests. So it's basically those parameters which we added here. Batch ID, success test, failed test. So we can switch it on. Let's, for instance, like switch off dataset, models, and let's see how it looks like now. Now we can see that here are our parameters, batch ID, failed test, successful test, so we can observe it and analyze that. And if you go for some batch, I don't know which you like the most. Let me go to 7th, just randomly. And I will be able to see that here are some artifacts. So if I open up artifacts, here my data drift seed. And if I press here, it will try like to load it, but actually I expected to see HTML here, but it's JSON. So probably I saved something wrong. Let's go back and see what's going on here. Data drift save. Ah, okay, yeah, actually I called method save instead of method save HTML, and it created for me a snapshot instead of HTML report. So probably if I do like this, and yeah, maybe I just create another experiment so that I call it better. Let me call it test suite. No, I don't like it. Maybe drift test. Yeah, let's call it like this. So I go back to my terminal. Again, I log my artifacts. Now if you highlight this row, you'll see that now we have experiment ID 2, right? So it's the other experiment. And let's go back to our web interface, see the experiments. Now we have drift tests, at least we named it correctly. And now let's check some running. I would add column batch ID and all the rest. Yep. So Again, let's select batch 7. I don't know why, and try to load artifact. So now that's correct HTML, and we can see the small summary of our tests, right? So we had 18 tests, 7 successful, 11 failed, and we can actually scroll it a little bit, aggregate it, for instance, by test status, and there we will be able to open up and see what's going on. Maybe it's not that convenient to analyze it right there, and if you want to browse all the failed tests, for instance, instead of looking at this right there, you could actually download it and open up in the browser. I believe it will be a little bit more convenient. But anyway, this is very nice because you can group all those experiments in the same place, see the login results, and compare it, and maybe store other artifacts, not only HTML report, but something else which is related to your experiment run, right? I hope now you have an idea how you can actually use MLflow to log the testing results together with your experiments, which is very nice for evaluation stages, for instance, right? If you do some experiments with machine learning models and you want to perform some staging in MLflow, because MLflow allows you to do that, you can connect to your models some additional artifacts, which could be testing results or maybe some report for potential debugging, right? That's all I wanted to share with you in this video. In the next module, we are going to move from the individual test suites and reports to a monitoring dashboard, where we will see the metrics in time and we'll be able to build interactive online dashboard.